The essential leadership concept of continuous learning provides the needed scaffold to span the information gap. So I want you to ponder for a moment on your life to come. How do you equip yourself for the challenges and opportunities which are coming? Did you say by continuously learning? How do you continuously learn? So the fundamentals of learning are simply created by answering the 5 W's and an H. What, who, where, when, why, and how. So learning is knowing how to ask the right question at the right time, then knowing where to get the information to answer the question. Thinking is not driven by answers, but by questions. Had no questions been asked by those who laid the foundation for a field, for instance, what about physics or biology, then that field would never exist. So furthermore, every field stays alive only to the extent that new questions are being generated and taken seriously. It becomes that driving force in that process of thinking. So to think through or rethink anything, one must ask questions and stimulate thought. Questions define tasks, express problems, and delineate issues. Answers, on the other hand, often signal a full stop in thought. Only when an answer generates a full question does the thought continue its life. How would you define continuous learning and education? So there are many different words or synonyms for continuous learning. Maybe it's lifelong learning, self-directed learning, continuous education, independent learning, autonomous. So educators are going to debate the nuances of these different synonyms. But for our discussion, we're going to define it as an ongoing, voluntarily, and self-motivated pursuit of knowledge for either personal or professional reasons. Therefore, it not only enhances our social inclusion, active citizenship, and personal development, but also self-sustainability as well as competitiveness and employability. All right, who should participate in continuous learning? This is a discussion we have often in our home as our children graduated from high school. Who should participate in continuous learning? Brian Tracy, the CEO of Brian Tracy International, specializes in training and teaching individuals within corporations. He shares, your ability to expand your mind and strive for lifelong learning is critical to your success. By dedicating yourself to learning, you can get ahead in every aspect of life. All it takes is commitment. The most successful people read an average of 2 to 3 hours per day. They belong to organizations that encourage learning and the most current information, and they share ideas. For people dedicated to continuous learning, it means that they attend annual conventions, they go to every session available that has new insights that can help them to be more effective in getting the results for which they have responsibility. So ponder, how could you encourage continuous education and growth in others? Where should you participate in continuous learning? Just take a moment and name some spaces where you learn. So in considering where to learn, individuals really need to take into account what they are studying, and every moment and every place can be an opportunity to learn something new. You have a smartphone in your hand. It's a place for you to learn something new. Do you have a Kindle app? Or maybe iBooks? Be sure that you're reading something. Subscribe to what's new. Be sure that you are learning and finding opportunities for growth and learning. I love the example that my own son showed me when he was young. He was about 13 years old at the time. We're driving in the car, and he asked a question. I don't even remember what it was. And I said, you know, son, I don't know the answer to that question. And he says, excuse me, Mom, may I borrow your phone? And quickly he says, he doesn't even type, he says, okay, Google, ask the question. And soon we had the answer. We forget often that we have this access continuously to information. So be sure that we answer our questions as we discover them or as we come up with them. So when should you participate in continuous learning? I love this. This is from USA Today. They said every day should be a learning opportunity. It doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are. USA Today said that the oldest college graduate is 99 years old and the youngest college graduate was only 10 years old. So one of the best things about life is that we never have to stop learning. There are always new skills to learn and techniques for us to adopt. When you look at the most successful people in the world, they understand this. Warren Buffett spends most of his time reading. The best entrepreneurs in the world, they don't act like they know everything. They understand the fact that they have to continuously learn to be successful. So for us to live to the fullest, we must continuously look for ways to improve. Even within our own companies, we need to strive to help our organizations in areas that are outside of our comfort zone. So companies from all over the world have recognized this. We have examples like Zappos and Facebook, which really heavily invest into their employees. They realize the power of teaching, and they promote from within the opportunity to support their staff to learn skills to bring back to their companies. Take a few moments to wander and ponder. How do you include learning in your daily life? How do you make such experiences in your life a learning experience? So, what reasons can you think of to keep learning every day? Why is it important? So, A.J. Agrawal, he states 4 reasons why everyone should continue to learn. 1, you're going to be happier. Learning is tough and it can be frustrating, and this is especially true when we talk about taking on something new. But although a task is hard, nothing is greater than reaching an accomplishment. For highly challenging goals like learning to write software, it can be amazing. But when you play sports or beat your personal records, there's really no further high. So several studies have shown that the more ambitious goals that you set, the happier you are. And when you decide your own goals, your happiness is not reliant on others. You get to pick how many hours you practice. You get to take ownership. Personal development is a way to guarantee a serenity from within. Second, it's irreplaceable. You are irreplaceable. A person who can adapt the most wins. And this is a piece of advice, and it is about a fighter pilot in the Air Force. It's not about the strength of the plane, but instead it's about the ability to react to the different circumstances and situations that makes a fighter jet. The best fighter pilots can adjust to more circumstances than the norm and make them much deadlier. So the same idea can be applied to our value to our organizations. If you can only sell your product, you are limited by your contribution. But if you can sell and build and run the operations, you've become irreplaceable. When we're learning, we're humble. And why is that? It's because we realize that we don't know everything. So every interaction we have is a chance to learn. And one of the recent ways to do this is by watching TED Talks. I love to watch TED Talks. And they're short little speeches that give you something to learn about a subject that you may not even have heard about, or maybe you don't even have an interest in it, but you keep an open mind and you discover patterns in how people are going to present their talks and how to learn from it. And it shows you that no matter who you meet, there's always something valuable you can learn from the encounter. Also, you become a great coach. So the only way through mastery is through teaching. So one of the best things in the world is, as you have learned something, be sure that you teach it, share it with others, and remember that everybody knows something. So even the most craggly, disappointing, unhappy person in the world is going to have something that they can teach you. I learned this recently when I stepped into a nursery. I walked in, I wanted some seeds, and I was very grumpy because I was going to have to deal with the same cashier that I've dealt with before, and he is a miserable man. He's middle-aged, he talks all the time about his family left him, they took everything, he has nothing, and he never smiles, he grumps at you. However, I said to him, "What can you tell me about these seeds?" And all of a sudden he smiled and he was very excited, and he told me everything you could imagine, and my seeds became very successful plants. So remember that we can learn something from everybody. Now, there are different kinds of education. There are actually 3 different kinds of education that you can acquire, and they are maintenance learning, growth learning, and shock learning. First, our maintenance learning, it refers to keeping current within our field, and this keeps us on pace and prevents us from falling behind. Many people think that maybe reading an occasional book or keeping current with the blogs and newsletters is going to really add to their education, but that's not really true. That is maintenance learning. It's kind of like checking the stock reports every week to find out the sales prices. Now, the information doesn't add to your knowledge, it only gave you some information about a particular stock. So maintenance learning is absolutely essential. It's similar to like light physical exercise. It's not going to increase your level of fitness or condition you, but it keeps you in shape. Next is growth learning. This is the kind of learning that adds knowledge and skills to your repertoire. So growth learning is going to help to expand your mind. You're acquiring information you didn't have before. You're able to do things you could not do previously. So some of the very best thinkers in the world today are producing some of the very best material and ideas you can use for continuous education. And you can find the information by doing quick searches. You can discover great ideas by listening to podcasts, TED Talks, reading blogs, reading books. You even have audiobooks now. It's so easy. You can discover incredible information without having to buy anything at all. Now, shock learning. Shock learning contradicts everything that you may know and even reverses a piece of knowledge or an understanding that you have. Shock learning is very valuable if you act upon it. So let me give you a quick idea of a shock learning experience. Sitting with a young lady one day, about 12 years old, she made a comment about eating eggs for breakfast. And in reply, a young man says, "Oh, I had eggs for breakfast today as well. Our chickens lay them though, so they're fresh eggs." She says, "I've never had a chicken egg. I've been eating duck eggs my entire life." Shock learning was when she learned that the eggs she bought at the store were actually from chickens. So we look that shock learning is valuable. It's something that gives us a piece of truth that we may not have known. Now, the primary sources of innovation in a company are unexpected successes or unexpected failures. Something that happens that is completely inconsistent with what should have happened. And the shock gives us insights into things that enable us to either take advantage of a major change or guard against a reversible. Now, unfortunately, most people are creatures of habits, and when something happens that is completely unexpected, they can choose to ignore that in favor of the old information because it's more comfortable. However, we need to remember to not be afraid of change. Always change and adapt. So we want to look at that information gap. Remember, we talked a little bit about information gap and how continuous learning really helps us. So the information gap is a crossover between what we know and what we need to know. So there's usually an information gap between the solid information that's in hand and what is needed, per Robert Greenleaf in Servant Leadership. So to solve the problem, we need to understand between what one knows and what needs to know. Continuous learning helps us to bridge that gap. Now, how does education bridge the information gap for you? Jim Rohn, in his book, The 12 Pillars, examines the essential nature of education. He asserts learning as so important that it is the first of his 12 pillars to successful life. Pillar 1 simply states, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. He continues on the facing page, page 19. Success is when you develop yourself beyond where you currently are. So you have to work harder on yourself, improving yourself, than you do on your job. So how do you continuously learn? How do you include a daily learning opportunity in your life beyond maybe a school schedule or a work schedule or personal commitments? So learning and knowledge are a powerful tool. Leonardo da Vinci stated that the natural desire of a good man is knowledge. But how does one continuously learn? That's the greatest thing. We need to really learn. How can we continuously learn? Where can you find knowledge and how can you implement it in your life?